Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Right, so what's an Oz? Oz, first of all, that's your first hint. On Oz is announced. It's announced. So what's the ounce of? It's the ounces of gold on the yellow brick road. And we have the Emerald City, which is the greenback or the US dollar. In the movie, Dorothy had ruby slippers. However, in the book, they were silver. Silver on gold, walking towards the Emerald City. And I want you to think of that idea for a second, because if you have gold and silver coming into contact with each other, you're going to hear a clack, 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 like money in your pocket, rather than walking towards the paper currency dream off at the end of the rainbow.
You're listening to Getting It Wrong to Get It Right.
On this week's episode, we have a gentleman that goes by the name of Sovereign Dave, and he's going to be telling us all about the movie The Wizard of Oz and the Yellow Brick Road. Very interesting. Let's get started. Dave, welcome to the show.
The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. So I think I often use this analogy when speaking to people about the sovereignty concept, and I think in stories, we're a group of people that love to tell stories. So I'm just gonna
Shanachie, Irish storyteller.
A lot of people will recall the Wizard of Oz, and there's a lot of different theories about there that the Wizard of Oz is about this and it's about that. But I'm going to pretty much nail it today, I think, for people. And we're going to bring together a couple of ideas here that they probably didn't have when they were looking at it. First things first is that I need to point out a couple of things. Frank L. Baum, who wrote The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, he was a theosophist, and he was also a writer for the newspapers of the day as well. And he was also into some occult stuff as well. Now, occult doesn't in and of itself mean bad. It just means hidden, folks, okay, right? So just be mindful of this. When I talk about occult, it doesn't mean bad. It means hidden, right? So ocular, right, to see. So just be, you might think of the word difficult. So, just think about all these words, folks. It just means that, you can't see them at the moment. So Frank L. Baum, anyway, wrote The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. But our cultural reference point today is going to be the movie. And the movie, there was a couple of tweaks that took place in it. And it's you need to look at this story as the analogy of sovereignty. It's all about sovereignty and it's all about money at the end of the day. So just to really kind of give you a top line, and I'm going to talk about the story in broad sweeps, Joe, if that's okay. So The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Right, so what's an Oz? Oh, first of all, that's your first hint. So Oz is announced. It's announced. So what's the ounce of? It's the ounces of gold on the yellow brick road. That's the first thing, right? So we have the Emerald City, which is the greenback or the US dollar, in Washington, D.C. However, here's where the story changes. In the movie, Dorothy had ruby slippers. However, in the book, they were silver. So they changed, and you have to be mindful, folks, okay, that there's some pretty clued-in people who are into imagery and hidden meanings. We even made a film, so a few things have changed. So in the movie, you should have had silver on gold walking towards the Emerald City. And I want you to think of that idea for a second, because if you have gold and silver coming into contact with each other, you're going to hear a clack, 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 like money in your pocket, rather than walking towards the paper currency dream off at the end of the rainbow. Okay, so that's one of your kind of first things to be mindful of here. So the Wizard of Oz starts off in Kansas, doesn't it? Kansas after the Great Depression or the Dust Bowl. So we have Dorothy, who's the only sovereign person in that whole movie. Once they go into Oz, Dorothy is sovereign, and she has her little doggy, okay, Toto. What does Dorothy mean as a name? Well, if everybody goes and looks up the word Dorothy, it actually means God's gift. That's the first other hint that's in there. But there's an even better hint. Aunt Em and Uncle Henry, Aunt Emily and Uncle Henry, Auntie Emily, if you look up what the word Emily means, it means hard work or persistence. And Uncle Henry referred to Henry Ford. And then you might go, but hang on, where were Dorothy's mum and dad? And then you realise that, in fact, Aunt Em and Uncle Henry were not actually the true parents, but they were legal guardians. They were legal guardians, And if they are family members and legal guardians, what does that make them? Legal tender. Let it sit with you, folks. Legal guardians, family members, tender. So after the Great Depression, we had Dorothy, hard work, gift from God, Henry Ford trying to elevate the awareness of the possibilities of the country here. And we had a crash, an economic crash. And Dorothy wakes up in the wonderful land of Oz. And what's the first thing that happened? A house fell upon a witch. And it nearly fell upon the little people of the day, the Munchkins. And somebody's having a little laugh at you again there, but maybe you didn't see it. But that's okay, because one of the two wicked witches fell. And we have the wicked witch to the east and the wicked witch to the west. Some might say it's capitalism and communism, and other people say it's the financial powerhouses of the day. But regardless, there's imagery there, an allegory for you to unpack. If you recall then that Dorothy met a wonderful, she's there with her dog Toto. So we have Dorothy, that's God's gift, in a magical land, fantasy land, with her dog Toto. And if I tell you something's the total show, what does that mean? So total means it's in summation, in totality. If you recall, when they were in Kansas, old lady on the bike, the spinster came across. What did she want? She wanted Toto, didn't she?
She wanted to get Toto put down.
Yeah, she wanted everything.
Are you struggling to grow your business? Book a free business growth consultation with Joe today. In this consultation, you'll receive professional advice, step-by-step guidance that will help you achieve success. Best practices and tips for improving profits. Clicking on the link in the description or contacting us directly.
So Dorothy wakes up in the land of Oz with one of the witches dead due to a property crash. And then they're going to reinflate the economy because of gold and silver on the way to the greenback. But then, of course, comes Glinda, the wonderful good witch. And she says to Dorothy that you need to go on a little walk. So Dorothy goes on a little walk. But if you notice that the start of the walk, that it's actually a spiral. And if you know your symbology, that actually goes back to one of the images of Theosophy, okay, right? That it's actually kind of like the circle of life kind of situation. So Dorothy starts off in this journey on a gold road, which would have been silver shoes on a gold road as she goes towards the Emerald City. So Dorothy on her dog. Now remember, Dorothy's the only sovereign flesh and blood human being in this story, okay, because she can think, she can talk, she can act. Okay, she's the brave one in the story. Okay, throughout the entire story, she's talking to her dog. Okay, right? She's finishing conversations with herself. Okay, so that's another hint there. Okay, right? She's not just a narrative piece; it's there to actually tell you something. You think, you talk, and you do as you go through this story. Dorothy comes across a couple of characters. She comes across, what does she come across? She comes across a straw man, doesn't she? A scarecrow. Right? You see where this is going?
The straw man.
The straw man. Okay. Straw man. Now, some people will tell you that straw man refers to the farmers of the day, which it quite possibly did. But in the upgraded movie version, if you pay attention, and everybody should go back and watch this film, folks, because it is loaded with imagery. They were laughing their asses off when they were looking at when making this, folks. Okay. So if you remember that the straw man used to say, I could while away the hours consulting with the flowers. I think it was talking with the rain. Do. And then Dorothy kicked in with the thoughts that you're thinking you could be another Lincoln if you only had a brain. Now, what did Lincoln do? Lincoln brought in the greenback, which was currency, which was not backed by the Federal Reserve of the day. Okay, it was government-backed money. It was honest money. Okay, so the straw man doesn't have a brain. Okay, he's a fictional entity, dead entity, and he is there to represent either the farmers, or I'm going to suggest there's a higher esoteric version here, meaning as well, okay, and that's a legal fiction entity that is, okay, your straw man that we have today. Okay, so just hold that idea in your head for a second. Dorothy then later on travels through the woods, and she happens to come across a Tin Man, if you recall the Tin Man, who was previously a woodcutter. But the problem is that the Tin Man is all seized up in the wood. And this is all for context, the story here, what it's all about. Tin Man can't speak. Help me. And he's looking to get oil, the lubricant of the economy. First thing was done was the oil was put into his mouth so he could actually speak. In the story, it transpires that the witch actually put a spell on the woodsman, okay? And actually put a curse in his axe. So every time the woodman actually used his axe, if I remember correctly, he either cut his hand off and had to replace it with metal, or it turned into metal. So the allegory is that the workers of the day, under the spell of capitalism, essentially, harmed themselves, funded by oil, and essentially corporatized themselves. Now, this gets even more delicious and juicy in a second, because the Tin Man, if you actually look up what TIN stands for in the US, it's actually a taxpayer identification number. And if you look that up, a TIN is there, right? So you have a TIN number, taxpayer identification number. So you now have Dorothy, the sovereign flesh and blood being, with Toto, okay, who represents everything, walking along gold and silver road, going towards the greenback US currency, right? Fiat currency, comes across a dead fiction entity, comes across a working persona of himself, okay? And what does he need? He needs a heart. So now we have Dorothy is still sovereign, meets the Tin Man, they align together, they carry on a little bit further, and then what happens? They come across a line. Some people are going to tell you that the line represents McKinley or William Bryce Jennings, who were politicians of the day. I'm going to suggest to you it's different, okay? Because these people were laughing up their sleeves all the time with you when they give you these false narratives, right? If you think of the royal crest of arms, there's two beasts on top of it. One is a unicorn and the other one is a lion. One is mythical and the other one represents courage. So what happens then? The lion is all brave and all bluster until he gets challenged by Dorothy, and then he becomes a coward. Grouping represents those that take a role where that they actually would suggest that they're going to protect you, right? So these people are the enforcers, right? So remember, Dorothy's sovereign, straw man, working identity, and now you've got the enforcing classes that come towards you, okay? Cowardly lion. And when challenged, what do they want? They want courage. Hold this idea in your head for a second. So holding. Even if, okay, holding. So now they all want to meet the wizard because of the wonderful things he does. Okay, so they're building it up all the time. And then they arrive at a field of poppies and they all fall asleep. And nobody can quite figure out why this field of poppies was in the story. But if you watch the film, folks, it's there because Glinda, the good witch, happens to drop some snow on the poppies and they all get back up again. It's a little bit of magic. That was relating to the drugs of the time, which was heroin and cocaine, opium and cocaine that were legal at the time. So that was, remember, you're in the magical land of Oz, okay, where the workers are all happy. And this is how they kind of tricked you, right? It's either by chance, it's a lot of chances, a lot of coincidences here, but bear in mind, we are still traveling towards the Emerald City. And we know there's a witch, don't we? Okay, so the first witch died how, Joe? What happened to her?
A house fell on her.
Yeah, so that was a property crash.
Mm-hmm. The second one was the water.
Yeah, what do you think that was? Liquidation. You know, I'm melting. So the whole thing was a financial allegory, right? So she's melting, the liquidation. And then they proceed on towards the Emerald City. Okay, but when they get there, they actually need glasses because in the book, the city's so bright, right? They actually need to wear glasses, okay? Blinded by the money, okay? Now, where this gets interesting is when they get in the film to the Emerald City, they get taken on a horse, okay? If you remember this horse, the horse was changing color all the time. And if I say to you something is a horse of a different color, what's that mean?
Something different than what it is.
Now you have it. So there's a lot of imagery, and I'm probably even forgetting most of the really important stuff. They get brought through the Emerald City on a horse of a different color. They then get to go and meet the great and mighty Oz, the powerful Wizard of Oz, and it's all an illusion. It's all a charlatan's trick, because what happens? They're all terrified. What does Toto do? Toto pulls back the curtain. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. And who's the people behind the curtain? Well, it's actually the ruling classes that are trying to distract everybody to their smoke and mirror show of fiat currency and just daily distractions in theatre and pantomime. And then, after Dorothy challenges the wizard, the so-called wizard, who was just transparent, who was actually just a touring kind of, bunkum man, basically, they then actually say to him, okay, well, can you bring me back? Okay, bring me back to Kansas. She wants to go back to Kansas, doesn't she? So there's no place to come, right? And she gets told, the wizard then offers to bring her back in the hot air balloon. Now, what does the hot air balloon?
Inflation.
Bingo. So Dorothy, remember, she's the only sovereign person in that story, Joe. Toto, the dog, at that precise moment runs off, and I think it chases after a cat. Dorothy chooses to get out of the hot air balloon to save her dog. Dorothy has a choice. She always has a choice. Throughout that entire story, she was given choices. When she gets the hot air balloon, her dog runs off. She can go to the magic of inflation with the magician, or she can go with everybody in totality, get her dog, okay, and we all do it together. So Dorothy elects to leave the hot air balloon, to leave the magician's power of inflation behind her, and go get her dog. And then Glinda, the good witch, comes back and says, Dorothy had the power all along. Click your heels together 3 times. And that doesn't make sense with ruby slippers, but it makes sense with silver shoes. That she had real money all along. Okay? That she didn't need the gold standard. That she didn't need the greenback. She actually, through hard work, her own ingenuity, and looking after her fellow man and woman, and forgetting all these legal constructs, she would actually have the power herself to rebuild herself away from all these charlatans. So there's a lot of other bits and pieces to the whole narrative. But for me, when I saw that horse with a different colour, I went, bingo, makes sense now. So there you go. That's part of the story.
I will look at it. If it's on Netflix, think of all the people that will start watching it today. They're tuning in. Yeah, I never put it that way. And there's lots of other movies like that as well out there. Are they movies that are telling us, laughing at us, or are they movies just telling people what it is?
They have to tell people. Look, it's like us, Joe. We can have a joke and we can educate people at the same time. They're looking at this from different levels. Their attitude is, look, we'll tell them, but we'll snigger up our sleeves a little bit at them as well, And it's just this duality of people. They can't get their head around that. But they do have to tell people. I always say that. They do have to legally tell people.
And that's it. What I think people really need to sort of get their head around as well is that with all the stuff that's going on in the world at the moment, they have to tell us.
Yes.
For this to happen, they have to tell, and then it can be implemented if no one objects or no one screams. How they tell us is up to them. They may come out on TV and say something using magic words which you interpret something totally different to what they interpret or what they're planning. I use the example that if there's an accident, a policeman will ask all the witnesses and then they will build a story because each witness will give a different story of how they seen it in their mind. And they'll all probably be different. And that's why so many people are asked. And it's always asked in layman's language as well. So, the rulers will tell us what's going on. They may put something in print, which is in the subpage of the subpage of the subpage of the subpage in the back of a website, which you didn't choose to look that far. They also, the Constitution, they might want to make an amendment to it, or they want to bring out a new rule. So what they'll do is they say, we have this act or we have this regulation, and they tell you what it's in it. And then but there could be 22 points in this. And in these 22 points, there might be something in there that is totally not for you or for the citizens or the sovereign people, I should say, of this land. And when it happens, they go, well, we told you, you didn't bother to look. So we need to be the safe keepers. We need to be the gatekeepers, I should say.
Yes.
And look. And not everybody can look at everything. I think certain groups or certain individuals need to pick certain things and look at that. Because if one person was to look at everything, you'd go insane, as we have.
Several times over now at this stage.
Several times over.
Yeah.
And I'm meeting more and more people. I'm connecting with more and more sovereign people who understand what sovereignty is and understand what state is. And there was one guy who says, he was listening to stuff, and educating himself over the last year. And there was one stage he was going, oh my God, how am I going to tell my wife this? And there was that case of madness, complete madness. That, okay, it's going to be fine. But I think everyone's going to go through this roller coaster of, oh my God. And I think that's an awakening that we need to have on it. PLC, the fake PLC. PLC. And as Wizard of Oz was showing us that it's all about being sovereign, PLC, I think people need to realise that Ireland PLC and every country is a PLC. It's a corporation.
Yep.
And everything that they have everything. They have pillaged it. They have taken it. But what they don't have is their sovereignty, everything that comes with it. But they're frightened to tell us that, because when people find that out, we've no debt. We've nothing. We owe nothing to nobody. I think the first thing that people need to know as well, I'll let you jump in now in a minute, Dave. People need to know is carry a passport with you all the time. And when you carry that passport with you, that is your sovereign identity. Would it be right or wrong with that?
Yeah, very right with that, Joe. I might just put in, I'm personally, depending on my mood, I might just say I'm a sovereign Irish national, and I might just ask them, have you got jurisdiction? Most people will end up getting themselves into trouble from what they're saying, right? 2 ears, 1 mouth. Shut up and listen. And we're talking here because we want to talk. But if somebody's looking for something from me and their intent is not good, well, I'm not going to give it to them. They still need my consent to actualize something and give them something over, And that's very important that people realize that. Your passport, yes, it's the interface between the systems. And that word passport comes from passporticulus. So, it was a way to get past the castle gates.
As we said I think it was the last one on one of the other shows, the Foreign Office produces them. And that's what we wanted people to think about as well. And look at licenses. And under this PLC, everything is regulated. And this one I'm going to ask, I'm going to throw this to you now, okay? With everything is regulated by this, but license, everyone needs a license to trade in this country, okay? So I'm going to ask you to explain to us why they need a license, where the license came from, why we don't have a license, and why stuff is regulated.
I understand, but I need to kind of talk about it in a roundabout way first, okay?
Perfect.
Did you know, Joe, that marrying your wife was against the law?
Did not know.
Did you know owning a dog was against the law?
No, I did not know.
Okay, well, congratulations. It's not really, okay? But in their system, it's a total inversion of everything that's good and right, okay? And for you to enter their system, you need permission. You need them to say, hey, it's okay to be married. Hey, it's okay to have a dog. Hey, it's okay to own something, right? In their system. So how do they turn a right into a privilege, right? How do they turn a sovereign right into a privilege? Well, they grant licenses. But you see, here's the thing. They were never conferred that right from the people, knowingly. So when you apply for a license, it's actually you giving yourself permission. They have you in a double mind. You think you're actually applying to a higher authority, but that higher authority is in fact yourself. You're going in as a lower level company employee, presuming that you need to get that permission from somebody else. And the only reason that you really think that is because other people around you appear to be doing the same thing as well. So we've accepted this as a kind of a social norm. I'm not saying to you that we don't need standards. I'm not saying to you that we don't need some level of minimum practice, okay? But that is well covered under historical law about food being fit for purpose, about being honourable in your transactions. You don't need legislation for that, folks. Even look back at history, we had guilds for that kind of stuff. If you wanted expertise, you went to the guild And that's how it works. Now we have free market enterprise, which isn't really free because now everything is the guild. So the guild has changed, it's morphed into the legal structure that you presume is actually giving you all these licenses and privileges and benefits. When you mention the fact that we don't have licenses, the only person who can give that license to yourself is yourself. Just be mindful about that, okay? You can give yourself permission to do something. That's fundamentally what it is. Just make a decision and go with it once it isn't causing harm, loss, or injury. Now, why is this important? Remember that in their system, something has to be honourable. It has to be honourable, even if it's not right. It has to be honourable and it has to be accounted for, okay? So there has to be like a check and a balance in their system. So with their idea of a corporation, okay, giving out licenses, that can only give out permission to another entity. So that license is being given from a dead corporation to another dead corporation, which is the straw man we can get into another day. But really where I'm going with this is as follows. In Ireland, we have a very, very unique situation that all the regulatory bodies, okay, have been issued a faulty license. And nobody is asking about the nature of those licenses. The only licenses that actually can be issued, which are legal, lawful, valid, and bona fides, are the 32 county area licenses that were initiated on the 21st of January 1919. And that's from a self-determination Irish perspective. And the reason those licenses are so important, this is the key. If anybody's losing their house, their dwelling, the primary dwelling, not investment properties, talking about your home. Because if you lose your home, you become a burden on other people, right? So I don't think anybody's got an issue with somebody keeping their dwelling, right? Because you need to keep, if you don't have protection, you're paying for it, right? Okay. So, I want everybody to have a dwelling, okay? But people are getting evicted by entities that don't have a license to operate in this state. People are being told what to do by entities that don't have a license to operate in this state. And what's the name of the state? The only state that was founded here was on the 21st of January 1919, 32 county election. They realized this at the time, that corporations, because of the profit motive, could have the potential to run over the people's needs. And they needed a way to keep corporations and entities, dead entities, made up of people, okay? How could they keep them under control, okay? Like even, I'll give you an example, like Nehefit, right, okay, right? How could you keep them under control? Where's their license to operate? How can I keep them accountable as a body? The only way to keep these bodies accountable is two-pronged. One, the people are accountable in it, okay? The individuals are accountable for their actions, but also the dead entity, the paper entity, is accountable as well. So it's like a train track. People are accountable for their actions, and the body is accountable as well under license. Because if they are breaking the law in legal land, you can rescind their license. And that's exactly what was set up in 1919. So Ireland was way ahead of the rest of the world. So all these corporations, just let me finish this up, all these corporations that are running riot at the moment, destroying the planet for profit motive, if this idea spreads, and it can spread because these corporations don't have the same rights flesh and blood people have, if this idea spreads that we can rescind these corporations' licenses if they're not working for the benefit of the living people, that's a game changer. We can still have corporations, but we have a way to hold them to account. And it's really important that people understand this. And this is the situation in Ireland to this day. We have this right. And you go into a bank, the banks don't have licenses. They're regulated by the central bank. But the central bank doesn't have a license to trade either. So this is the problem.
People listen to this. Okay. So all this was created, license for the good of the people, and the license can be taken away if it's not doing the good for the people, was created in 1919. Yes?
Yes.
Now, this is where people will try and get their heads around. 1919, as we know, then there was a civil war. Okay. And then you had the new constitution, which 1922 and then 1939. Correct?
Yeah.
So,
sorry, 1922, 1937, and people say some funky stuff happened in 47 as well.
47, sorry, 1937, right?
Yeah.
So if those new constitutions, right, do they still carry, this is what people are going to ask, do they still carry the license in them from the 1919 Constitution?
No, because what happened was, and we can share this video with people, that De Valera maintained at the time that he had the mandate from the first Dáil, and he used that. He had a duality about him. He used that mandate from the first Dáil to say that, the oath to the crown doesn't matter, okay? And he was fudging, basically. Essentially, what happened was De Valera said, okay, this matters, but it doesn't matter. Let's play the game here. But what happened was that the fish rots from the head a little bit, and all this only carries the weight of law if the people consent to it. All right. So there's still, how do I say this? There's still a fudge taking place to this day.
Yeah, we know there's a fudge, and the reason we know the fudge is there is because if you mention and persist to mention the license route.
Yeah.
It causes panic.
Yes.
Okay. Or causes people to raise their head. Asking a judge, does he have a license here to practice? And that can rattle a couple of feathers as well. So what I'm trying to get to people is to really get them to understand is that, yes, they need licenses. It's still sitting there in the back of the Constitution. It's not shown in plain sight. Mm. But the PLC corporation, which we are all under, know this.
Yeah, it's a permit, really, in a sense. It's like a parking permit, Joe. If you just think of it like that, okay. They don't have the authority to really give out a license as such, which is why all the licenses that you do see don't have the word ERA directly underneath the HARP logo.
Yeah.
So they can't give out a proper bona fides license. They can give out a nice graphic and a couple of words on the side, but it wouldn't stand up to scrutiny. Okay, right? So you remember a license has to have some form of signature on it to give it authority, because we're talking about sovereign beings. They can only actually generate a printout that might sit up on the wall. And I might say license, but it's not a license. I'm telling you, it's not a license.
I spoke to other people, sovereign people, who, on this subject, and they say to me, they do not have licenses to trade here. And the reason is they don't have a sovereign license. Let's be clear that they don't have a sovereign license. They have a corporation license, but they don't have a sovereign license. Mm. And when I've asked people about the land, they say some housing estates out there, people have bought the house, but they don't own the land. The land is probably still under the Duke of somewhere, would probably still own the land. And looking at it, that this land registry goes back to the chieftains, but it even goes further. You have to even go further back past the chieftains to know that the land is owned. And people go, well, the Duke of such and such might own this land. Not as an heir as sovereign. Heir as sovereign, and that's what happened in 1916. Clear all that. And to basically say our land and everything is owned by the people. But all the natural resources were owned by the people as well. But in World War II, De Valera thought of, just in case, decided to take all this from the sovereign people so the state could have all these natural resources as well. And that's another element that people have to realize, that was just him making that decision, but they are actually owned by the people.
Yeah, there's no statute of limitations on what's right and what's lawful. It's just really important that people are mindful of this. But if you go back, right, you can go back, right, to those people, but they might have a legal claim in it, but they don't have a lawful claim in it, okay, right? So when the 32 counties, like if you can come up to me with a better straw poll than 32 counties coming together, right, and having a vote on a landslide victory coming out and then saying, look, the land of Ireland belongs to the people of Ireland and to them alone, right? That's the best deal you're going to get all day, folks. You know, sorry.
But you're seeing it here, you know, where they do under this fake corporation, like they'll run a referendum and everyone will go no when they go, we're going to run another one till you say yes. And if you don't say yes, we're going to run another one till you say yes. You know, what's going on at the moment, at this very moment, we're in June, July time, is people have to remember consent, participate, human rights are the three things that people have to remember. All this stuff that's going on, that, oh my God, they're doing this, they're doing that. You have rights, you have human rights. And, you know, there is stuff changing as well. And the cards are falling. The cards are falling. And you have to be brave. You have to be brave with it. Yeah.
And if I tell you something's got the hue of something, Joe, what does that mean? It's got the colour of something. Mm-hmm. So it's audible. It's what you hear. Okay. So if I go there and I say, I have hue, man rights, I've got the colour of man rights. It's all about your sovereign rights, folks. Okay. Sovereignty is the king, folks. Okay. It's the linchpin. They don't talk about it. That's what I said. Oh, we've lost financial sovereignty. Oh, we'll leave behind these dated ideas of sovereignty from, that's Micheál Martin. You know, they want it to be old hat. Yeah, you know, sovereign debt. Sovereign can't have debt, folks. Sovereign can't have debt. At every opportunity, the only time you hear that word is to sully it. Okay? That's the only time you ever hear it. And you heard about sovereign debt and sovereign bonds and everything else. Sovereign bonds, folks, where your birth cert's being used without your permission to pay off Europe's banking debt. So to refinance, because you can't pay a debt with a debt, folks, to refinance Europe's banking debt, okay? And then they talk about sovereign airspace and all these wonderful words, but they will not ever explain to you what that term really means in this country. And look at the only example that you can think of when listening to me talk about the word sovereign. You're going to think of a lady across the road over in the UK called Elizabeth, who lives in a castle, is pretty well to do, but that is pageantry. That's royalty, folks. It's pageantry. It's not sovereignty, although she knows how to be sovereign. She writes letters. She gives instructions. She doesn't have a license plate. She doesn't ask permission of people. She acts, and people listen. Doesn't make her a bad person. She knows her mind. But what's the difference? Below her, she's decided that everybody else is subject below. Okay, like object, but subject to her. So either you are going to be subject to somebody else, or you're going to be sovereign yourself. And you're going to know your mind, your think, your talk, and your do, and you're going to take action accordingly. And if you need to get clarification what somebody wants from something, or where you need to write something, or what it means, that's your God-given right. You can ask questions all day, and I suggest you do. You get a lot of fantastic answers. And if you don't get an answer, that's still an answer. Really important people realize that.
We'll just leave it on one note. These people are civil servants. They work for you. All the political advisors, this Nepta, Tony Hooley Gooley and his gang, they work for you. You know, you don't work for them. You do not participate and do not consent. That's what you need, the message. They are not my advisors. They are not my advisors. We will leave it there. We will leave it there for today. Leave it there. Thanks, Dave. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe.
I will go and watch Wizard of Oz and take my little notepad and go, woohoo. And also, just for everyone as well, I think everyone should start just focusing on themselves and their family, the family unit. And as I said, we're going to be, you know, one of these every week, as we keep telling people. But you know, people that are jumping on the site, and you'll see the link here on the page where people can jump on, and we're connecting the dots. We're connecting the dots. Until next week, guys.
Super.
God bless. Be sovereign. Take care.